Guthrie Award reception is one of my favorite tasks as chair. It's the day we get to gather and celebrate on-the-ground access to justice champions. Before presenting the Guthrie Medal to Robert, I would like to invite Kerri Joffe to speak. Kerri, along with Mariam Shanuda and Doreen Way of Arch Disability Law Center, nominated Robert for this award. Kerri, over to you.
Good evening, Law Foundation trustees and staff, honored guests, friends, and colleagues. I am one of the staff lawyers at Arch Disability Law Center, and on behalf of myself and my colleagues, Doreen Way and Mariam Shanuda, who are sitting right over there, and the board and staff at Arch, it is our utmost delight to be here to celebrate Rob Lattanzio tonight. A huge thank you to the Law Foundation for presenting Rob with the 2022 Guthrie Award. And thank you so much to those who supported the nomination by writing incredibly moving letters. Arch board members Sandy Bell and Yvonne Simpson, David Lepofsky, Ina Chadha, who I see right over there, Neil Belanger, Senator McFedrin, Professor Ravi Malhotra, and the self-advocates of respecting rights, two of whom are with us tonight. For Doreen, Mariam, and I, deciding to nominate Rob was very easy. As someone who has dedicated his career to advancing and defending the rights of people with disabilities, including their equal access to justice, Rob truly embodies the spirit of this award. We at Arch have had the privilege of getting to know Rob in many capacities. We know him as a caring mentor, a decisive leader, a dedicated visionary, a fierce advocate, a loyal teammate, and an extremely skilled and empathetic lawyer. In short, Rob takes on many roles and excels at them all. As a leader, Rob has a very strong vision of advancing full equality and inclusion for people with disabilities. He works hard to make sure that Arch understands and addresses the needs of diverse disability communities. He's committed to Arch's unique role, both in helping individual clients with their legal problems and also working with communities on systemic issues that affect people with disabilities across Ontario and throughout Canada. Under Rob's leadership, Arch has directly contributed not only to advancing the rights of people with disabilities in Ontario, but also at the national and international levels. No small feat. During the pandemic, Rob shone as a leader. In a time of so much uncertainty, Rob instilled confidence in Arch's staff to continue doing our work, even when the day-to-day injustices were acute and seemed never-ending, and the legal issues confronting us were novel and highly complex. Arch assisted individual clients and disability communities to deal with discriminatory visitation policies in congregate care settings, advocate against discriminatory healthcare triage protocols, address barriers to accessing digital courts and tribunals, raise awareness about the discriminatory impact of medical assistance in dying, and so many other issues. Rob would tell you that our work during the pandemic could never have happened without the Arch team, and I certainly won't argue with that. But the team would tell you that we couldn't have done it without Rob's leadership, his vote of confidence, his guidance, and most of all, his caring. Our work is always demanding and can sometimes be disheartening. People with disabilities are marginalized in so many ways. They experience disproportionate poverty, social isolation, lack of safe and adequate housing, insufficient disability services and supports in the community, inaccessible education, and disability discrimination. As a result, the demand for our services is enormous, and the wins are hard-fought and often infrequent. Despite the inherently challenging nature of our work, Rob's passion, energy, and commitment inspire staff every day. And Rob is not just a leader at Arch. He is also a well-respected leader within disability communities and the broader human rights and social justice communities that we often work with. He's a trusted advisor who's often asked to work on access to justice projects, sit on advisory committees, and give advice about laws, policies, and strategic advocacy. As a lawyer, Rob has litigated seminal cases that have helped shape disability rights law in Ontario and across the country. He's testified before legislative committees on key pieces of disability rights legislation, written many a legal brief to policymakers, convened disability community meetings, mentored staff and students, and worked closely with Arch's board and community partners. And I have witnessed him perform all of these roles, sometimes in the span of just 1 week. And as if all of that isn't enough, Rob has a few lesser-known talents. He is the office handy person, hanging shelves, building desks, and moving furniture. And that is not an exaggeration. I saw a drill in his office this afternoon. He is the bringer of donuts and sometimes corn on the cob when we need to work late. Also true. He is the tech support person when Doreen isn't available. And from time to time, he provides us with some much-needed comic relief. Rob is a caring, dynamic leader with a deep commitment to justice, equality, and inclusion for people with disabilities. He has conceived, grown, led, and sustained innovative test case litigation, law reform initiatives, and public legal education projects. Rob ensures that Arch continues to be a leader in disability rights law and a model of excellence in disability rights advocacy. On behalf of myself, Doreen, and Miriam, it is an absolute honor to work with you every day. A sincere and heartfelt thank you to you, Rob, for everything that you do. Thank you to Legal Aid Ontario, our main funder, for supporting our work. And thank you again to the Law Foundation for recognizing Rob's outstanding achievements in access to justice and equality for people with disabilities.
Tonight is the 16th Guthrie Medal we've had the privilege of awarding. The Guthrie Award was created in 1996 in honor of the late H. Donald Guthrie, the Foundation's longest-serving chair. He was appointed to the founding board in 1974 and served for more than 21 years, 13 of those as chair. Neil Guthrie, son of the late Donald Guthrie, is here this evening. So great to see you, Neil. Like Donald, the esteemed group of Guthrie Award recipients share a passion for access to justice, especially for the most vulnerable among us. Access is a word we use a lot at the Foundation, and I know, it's a word that resonates deeply with Rob. Rob has dedicated his career to access, but not just access. As we've heard, it's more than that. It's inclusion of persons with disabilities. It sure feels good to celebrate nice guys like Rob, doesn't it? We all need this. Rob, as you've heard, is the executive director of Arch Disability Law Centre, a specialty legal clinic that defends and advances the rights, freedoms, and inclusion of persons with disabilities. Rob, as you've heard, has shaped and been shaped by Arch. He joined the clinic as an articling student in 2003. He became a staff lawyer after being called to the bar. Then, in 2015, he became its leader. Rob's decision to pursue a career in law was inspired by his early work as a community worker, helping young people with disabilities gain access and inclusion into home and educational settings. He saw firsthand the barriers and discrimination that people with disabilities were constantly facing. Then came Eaton versus Brant County Board of Education. The case centered around the Eaton family's request to have their daughter placed in a regular versus special education classroom. Inspired by the case and the words of Justice Arbour in her Court of Appeal decision, the fire was lit, and Rob headed to law school, McGill University, to be precise. Rob's role in the disability rights community has been described as essential and indispensable. His advocacy for the rights and equitable inclusion of persons with disabilities has substantively changed Canadian laws and public policy, the way lawyers are educated and practice, and most importantly, people's lives. Now, Rob is the first and fastest to point out that he doesn't do this alone, which just speaks to his humility. Without exception, every person who supported his nomination said that they admire the way Rob listens, the way he empathizes, and the way he collaborates. They call him a bridge builder, a generous mentor, a sage and astute advisor, the epitome of integrity and compassion, humble, but also relentless. Rob's imprint on Ontario's disability rights legislation, policy, education, and communities is expansive. Rob's litigation and law reform work has informed some of the most important pieces of disability rights legislation in Ontario and Canada, including the implementation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Education Act, Medical Assistance in Dying, and the Accessible Canada Act. Helping to change the justice system from the inside out, he led the creation of ARCH's Accessible Services Program, which educates lawyers and paralegals on providing accessible services to persons with disabilities. He was instrumental in developing the Disability Law Intensive, a collaborative program of ARCH and Osgoode Hall Law School that enables students to work on test case litigation and systemic law reform. And despite his packed schedule, Rob makes time to personally mentor law students and give guest lectures and talks across the province to deepen what law students, licensees, policymakers, and the public know about the rights and realities of people living with disabilities. Even with his esteemed title, accomplishments, and reputation, Rob has stayed true to his community lawyering approach. With community leaders, he co-founded Respecting Rights, a committee of self-advocates with intellectual disabilities who work with ARCH lawyers and social workers on public legal education and law reform projects. By example and by design, he is immersing intersectionality and decolonization into ARCH's work. His leadership of the clinic's proactive responses to discriminatory and unsafe COVID policies no doubt saved lives. Rob has devoted his life to access, to inclusion, to justice for all persons with disabilities. His caring is as deep as his tenacity and intelligence. It is compelling and telling that one person can be so highly respected and beloved in the staff room, in the boardroom, the classroom, the courts, and the community. Rob is such a person. Rob, on behalf of the Law Foundation of Ontario, it is my sincere pleasure to present you with the Guthrie Award. Will you please join me at the podium? I'm going to hand this to you, Rob, and say our biggest congratulations. We're really so thrilled to celebrate this moment with you.
Thank you. A couple of things. Yes, my first reaction was this is a team award, and it's really, really tough to process all of this. There's no question. I'm just so moved. Thank you, Chair Rothstein, for those moving words. That was incredible. And Kerri, of course. So Kerri, you're amazing. You know, we all know that. Thank you. But I'm going to stick with my script because I wrote a script because I knew this was going to happen. And I told myself, don't go off script because this will happen. So, thank you. Thank you so much. Being here with you all in person is truly a gift. It's an exceptional gift. After all we've been through, right, over the last almost 3 years, it is just incredible to have all of you here under the same roofs in this incredible space, quite frankly. People that I adore and cherish, thank you so much for coming here during a pandemic. I really do appreciate it, and in addition to that, in addition to having you all here, what's really important as well is that you all had important and critical roles in my own professional and personal growth, and in the achievements that we are all celebrating tonight. I wish to thank you all for being here and for sharing this moment with me, and for all the unwavering support that you have given me and Arch throughout the years. Thank you. I wish to, again, sincerely thank Chair Linda Rothstein and the Board of Trustees, the Law Foundation CEO, Lisa Cirillo, for this immense honor bestowed upon me this evening. I also wish to express my sincerest gratitude to the Law Foundation staff who pulled all of this together. It is difficult to do this on any given year, but this is the first after 3 years. We're still in a pandemic. This is an incredible celebration. Thank you so much for all the work that must have gone into this. Thank you. And I'd also like to take a moment and echo Kerri in all that, and Chair Rothstein, of course, in everything that the Law Foundation does. I really want to thank you, in addition for this recognition, for all the invaluable and critical work that the Law Foundation does in advancing access to justice. To Kerri and Doreen and Miriam, who pulled this nomination together very stealthily. Quite impressed. Thank you. Thank you for Kerri. Thank you for your words. And Kerri, Doreen, and Miriam, thank you for your generosity, your partnership, your commitment, your friendship. True privilege working alongside each of you. I am truly fortunate to do the work that I do and to do it alongside you. It's a privilege. My sincerest appreciation and gratitude to the nomination supporters, a group of individuals, and many are here with us tonight, who I also so highly respect and admire. Sandy Bell, Ina Chadha, Professor Yvonne Simpson, Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, David Lepofsky, Professor Ravi Malhotra, Neil Belanger from Indigenous Disability Canada, and the amazing Respecting Rights team. Reading the nomination and support letters was an incredibly moving experience. I thought it was, when I wrote this, I said this was the most incredibly moving experience I had. Clearly, that was not the case. I really was just honored to be nominated, truly. But I didn't really have time to process it, so I learned I was nominated and received it sort of in a go. So I was trying to process. I also wasn't sure if this was a hint for early retirement. I'm not sure. Reading some of those letters, and I didn't know where to go from there. But the legacy of Donald Guthrie and the esteemed group of past recipients, and we have at least one past recipient here with us this evening. It's really filled with exceptional thinkers, advocates, leaders, justice champions that I'm now in the company of. Well, again, it renders me just so very grateful and humbled by this recognition. And I wish to also acknowledge Neil Guthrie. I just met Neil Guthrie, and it was an absolute pleasure, and I'm so thrilled that you're here. I also wish to express gratitude to all those that reached out to me. I was overwhelmed by the outpouring of messages and lovely notes from our communities, our partners, our clients, and community legal clinic colleagues. This award means so much to me, but it also means so much to our team at Arch, and it means so much to our communities and to disability advocates across the province and across the country. This is the first time, as I understand it, that this award was given recognizing disability rights work in particular. Our communities of disability advocates across the country are incredibly dedicated and talented advocates and thinkers who are tireless in their efforts. The clinic system, another amazing community, Community Legal Clinics and the Association of Community Legal Clinics of Ontario, is also an incredible community, so supportive, committed, talented, and a legal community like no other. Legal Aid Ontario, our core funder, I wish to express my thanks. We could not do the work that we do without the support of Legal Aid Ontario. I work with an incredibly dedicated, talented, and passionate staff team with a tireless commitment toward our mission, and board members who volunteer countless hours offering their time, their skill, their expertise. They're all truly dedicated to our mission. I am so fortunate to work with all of you. And my family, I was going to name them all, but thank you, Chair Rothstein. You all know who you are. I wouldn't be here without you. Thank you for all the support that you've given me throughout the years. With several days away from from the anniversary of my father's passing, I've also been thinking about the people that our communities and Arch lost over the last several years. We sadly and abruptly lost our board president, Teresa Daw, several years ago, and her dedication and commitment is still an inspiration to all of us at Arch. We also lost other pillars in our community. Professor Marcia Rioux, longtime board member and advocate John Ray, longtime advocate Richard Rothstein, as well as two of our very own respecting rights members, Antoinette Charlebois and Stéphane Bélanger. Their memories live on through our work. So a little bit about my path. Thank you so much, Chair Rothstein, I had talked about this as well in a different in a different panel, and the words of Justice Arbour in the Eden Appeal really just spoke to me, and what it did was it made the connection. I didn't know this work was even possible, and I actually didn't know Arch existed because I was a Quebecer at the time, and Quebecers don't know what is happening in Ontario, at least at that time. At that time, we didn't know because there was no internet, that is why. And so that was just a real awakening for me. But there was a path getting there, and I can think back to when I was 14 or so. My sister Morella had coerced me into. Asked me. Well, I don't know nicely, but asked me to volunteer at a summer camp. It was a segregated camp for children with disabilities. And that experience left an indelible impression on me. And along with my sister's tireless work in fighting for inclusion, I found myself years later, but long before a career in law was even a kernel of an idea, working in the disability services sector for about, I'd say, 5 years or so, which included working in institutions and group homes and vocational settings and in schools. I remember when I was a philosophy major wrestling with concepts of I'm going there. Concepts of justice in ways I don't have the luxury truly to enjoy these days. But while thinking about Rawlsian theories of justice and fairness during the day, there was such a disconnect when I would get to work in the afternoon and the evening, and how access to justice meant something so different, or really in reality was non-existent for certain people. the isolation, lack of autonomy, lack of decision-making. It's an entirely different world. And I later was witness to events that on the outside would have a clear, swift, and severe justice response. But within this world, there was none. I had many short-lived musings about different career paths, and people in this area will chuckle about that. But following that particular experience, I benefited from a newfound singularity of focus. Go to law school, become a lawyer, convince Arch to hire me as a lawyer, and create change. Because I could no longer think of anything else that had that level of purpose for me. Arch holds an important place within the story of disability rights in Canada. Born from the disability rights movement, Arch's work with our communities includes reforming the Human Rights Code to include disability as a protected ground of discrimination over 40 years ago, to advancing important test case litigation and reforms at the forefront of disability rights, and which contributed to evolution of the human rights law in Ontario and Canada. My team and I, my excellent, incredible, talented team and I, understand that it is an honor and a privilege to continue the work of those who came before us. We always understand the weight of this and the demands for the highest of standards of excellence in our advocacy and everything that we do. I'd like to offer some reflections on access to justice from a disability rights perspective and on the current realities facing our communities. Unfortunately, Peter Park is not able to join us this evening. Peter, as a co-founder and leader in the People First movement and a co-founder of Respecting Rights and an institution survivor and a co-creator of the award-winning Into the Light exhibit, wisely reminds us often that good change comes slow. I think the first time I heard him say this, I was an articling student, as he explained that we need to shut down all the institutions, but we need to do it right and not create institutional type of responses to closing institutions. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. True change needs proper capacity building, culture shifts, the law needs to catch up. We need to plant the right seeds. So here's my attempt at artistic interpretation of the Guthrie medal's depiction, because I believe those are seeds. I should just check. No, the medal has changed. The medal has changed. But I think there are some, I don't know. But the previous medal had some seeds. And I prepared this analogy, so I'm going to read it. So it is. So to sow the seeds that will take, right? Not everything takes, but we want to choose the seeds that will take by truly understanding the environment, the soil type, what was planted previously, and carefully selected to meet the actual needs of those who will harvest the bounty. I always appreciated the underlying message whenever Peter reminds us of this, because it's also one of hope and positivity, that change is slow because it also needs to include the ups and downs. The downs being an opportunity to recalibrate, rebuild, and refocus within the broader strategy for change. A reminder that we can't go slow and we can't slow down or keep our focus off the goal, because it's all part of that process, all part of those ups and downs. Making the change more sustainable and meaningful, that's the process. In fact, Respecting Rights, which is an innovative approach to capacity building, rights education, and law reform through accessible and arts-based approaches, was actually a product of such a moment where we felt a setback. We felt a really serious setback, which pushed us to reassess our thinking and respecting rights grew out of that. On December 3rd, 2018, just switching gears a little bit, Arch co-hosted an event in Ottawa celebrating the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. At that event, Minister Carla Qualtrough announced Canada's accession to the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And during this time, the Accessible Canada Act was also being debated and strengthened through fearless advocacy that brought communities together. And Arch was privileged to be a part of that. And I've shared this observation before, but it's so stark in my mind. In that room, I remember this cautious optimism. There was such a cautious optimism in the room, but it was optimism. I remember that feeling. And I think at that time, and I think it's so stark in my mind because it was about a year or so away from the pandemic, and everything would change unbeknownst to all of us in that room. And as the health crisis made its way to Canada, marginalized communities, as we know, were the most impacted in the severest and cruelest of ways. The compounded and complex impacts that our communities were faced with due to many factors, including the intersection of all of their identities, compounding effects of multiple disabilities, extreme poverty, underlying ableism, isolation and exclusion, lack of supports, services, lack of accommodations, lack of accessible, affordable, and safe housing, lack of appropriate health care, and generally systems and policy frameworks that are just not designed with our communities in mind. We pivoted quickly before we truly understood what would transpire during the early days of the pandemic, because we knew that all the issues that we have been advocating on would be exacerbated exponentially during this crisis. Our efforts to immediately understand all the different impacts in real time was only possible due to our work, trust, and relationships with our partners, other legal clinics, our communities, and our clients, which allowed us to rely on our expertise that rests not only on the substantive areas of law, but also on how to appropriately engage and accessibly engage and deliver legal services to our particular communities. Ultimately, the holistic approach that is truly embedded in all of Ontario's community legal clinics is what allowed all legal clinics, including Arch, to be so well positioned to address the access to justice issues in real time as they arose during the pandemic. In our practice, from an access to justice perspective, many issues that we deal with, they don't have a clear legal response. And in many of our cases where they have gone through other legal services, for example, we are the last resort. There may actually be no clear legal process available to clients that come to us. Legislative and policy frameworks often either completely ignore rights-based approaches that provide for legal recourse within disability services context, or carefully exclude them from meaningful remedy. As I reflect on our successes, on our failures, day-to-day efforts to drive and advance systemic change in removing barriers to access to justice, I'd like to share some thematic reflections with you. The first is trust. The importance of learning from actual stories, truly understanding what is happening on the ground, cannot be overstated. To earn the trust and maintain it requires work, but it's crucial. Our role is to ensure that our clients and communities, experts of their own lived experience, are provided with a safe space to inform all that we do. Building that trust also requires a true understanding of the impacts of the legacies of exclusion, eugenics-based policies and laws, institutionalization and segregation, and pervasive ableism and barriers, and the trauma and impacts that this continues to have. These relationships must include direct partnerships with communities, and we must always be vigilant on ensuring that the voices that are being supported, the voices that being supported remain the appropriate ones and be reflective of the space that alternatively we are taking. The second thought is one of vigilance. The pandemic underscored how quickly hard-fought rights can be lost, whether temporarily or temporarily permanent. We found ourselves fighting for every inch, always a battle. Access to justice is always at risk. The ease within which decisions to suspend accommodations, services, and basic human rights during the pandemic was a terrifying reminder of why we must remain vigilant and relentless in our fight for inclusion. My third and last thought here is one of innovation. And innovation in addressing access to justice is actually, in my mind, just a necessity. It's just what we need to do. Addressing needs, being most effective and impactful, can never be static. We must always go through the rigor of truly understanding the problem alongside those most marginalized and made vulnerable. During this health crisis, we have witnessed a legacy of genocide in this country, with the unearthing of hundreds upon hundreds of unmarked graves, with an estimated 6,000 children who died while attending residential schools. We were all witness to the realities of how far we still need to go in addressing ongoing anti-Black racism and anti-Asian racism. I'd like to spend the remainder of my time talking about a legislative amendment that occurred during the pandemic that changed our landscape in this country. In March 2021, the criminal code was amended to expand eligibility for medical assistance in dying, or MAID, to people with serious disabilities, illnesses, or diseases who are not dying. And this is soon to be further expanded in March 2023. While we argue this is discriminatory, I wanted to discuss the impacts of this from an access to justice perspective tonight. So within the context of broken systems, strained by the health crisis and rising costs, and compounded by all those barriers and realities that I previously mentioned that are facing persons with disabilities and that Kerri mentioned earlier, it is now today significantly quicker for a person with a disability to access medically assisted death than to access services and supports that they need to live in their communities. We have all been made aware of this through reports from the media as people with many diverse disabilities, with some recent media reports highlighting multiple chemical sensitivities, long COVID, for example, have either died of MAID or are in the process of accessing it. Not because of the intolerable suffering from their disability, but rather from the socioeconomic deprivations which they experience. We argue this is no choice at all. But what this shows is that for many, they have either tried to seek redress under legal processes unsuccessfully, or they have come to the harsh realization that their disability-specific needs will be left unmet, with little accountability, transparency, and redress. MAID shows us through yet another lens how inaccessible justice can be for many members of our communities who are made to be so vulnerable and marginalized by our systems. MAID spotlights the fundamental barriers and ableism that are still embedded in our laws, policies, and justice systems. MAID has also changed our legal practice in ways that I never would have thought imaginable. Now, looming on many of our case files are questions of life and death. As lawyers, we are now working against what I can only describe as a death date, which fundamentally alters our way of practicing law, where in the past, we explored creative and innovative ways to address gaps in our systems to benefit our clients. We now increasingly practice law with a backdrop of a countdown clock, where the stakes are at their most severe. When I lost my first client to MAID because the administrative justice avenues were not effective in ensuring the accommodations that my client required, I was at the time, and to this day, unable to reconcile how someone who wished to live had no choice other than death because of poverty and a failure to be appropriately accommodated. So I hold in my hands here a card. I received this card in the mail from my client about 5 days after my client died of MAID. While I won't read you the card, I won't read the contents of the card, but in difficult moments, I think about this card and its message, and I think about the strength and bravery that it took to write it. So I wish to conclude with this. Inclusion cannot be negotiable. It's not just when it's easy, not just when it fits comfortably within versions of the status quo or particular agendas. It is our role to upset the status quo. I don't want our children to live in a place where our current status is normalized, but rather to have them thrive in the benefits and wealth of what a richly diverse, inclusive society offers. This award recognizes the hard-fought wins and tireless advocacy towards achieving justice for all on behalf of all of our communities and ARCH. But I also personally accept this recognition as a renewed call to action. I will strive to live up to the high ideals that this medal signifies, and I wish to again sincerely thank you for the honor bestowed upon me, and I thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Thank you.